Clear as mud? Perfect. With that, Mr. Hornbeek, 90 seconds, opening statement. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Trace. Thank you, Haley. Good evening, everyone. My name is David Hornbeek, and I'm proud to stand before you as a candidate for mayor of Edmond. I opened my architectural office 42 years ago here, and it was the wisest decision that I ever made. Edmond has been a place to grow, raise my family, and I built a career planning and problem solving for the city, for our schools, for the state, and this university. As your mayor, I will bring that same approach to guide Edmond's future with transparency, oversight, and accountability. Edmond is at a crossroads. People love our community, schools, and safety, but I hear concerns about traffic and quality of life and managing growth. Growth is not something to fear. It's an opportunity to embrace, if it's done with foresight and planning. I believe in managed growth. By anticipating future needs, prioritizing investments wisely, and engaging the community in open communication, we can sustain what makes Edmond unique: our friendliness, our safety, and our exceptional quality of life. With planning and problem solving, along with transparency, oversight, and accountability, together we can ensure Edmond remains a place we're proud to call home. I'm David Hornbeek. I'd appreciate your vote for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hornbeek. Mr. Robbins, 90 seconds to you, opening statement.
My name is Tom Robbins, and I'm today standing before you to run for mayor simply with one goal in mind, that is to fully embarrass my 3 teen sons, and giving me that opportunity here today. When I say we're all in as a family, we're all in. There's nothing more horrifying, or I guess as they would say cringe, than knowing that next week you'll receive a picture of them in your mailbox. So why is it that I want to run? I'll be in a unique situation. The first person who'll be able to serve as mayor that was born in the 1980s or after. I spent the morning with 50 young Edmond leaders, high school as part of the Edmond Leadership Program. And they're exciting to meet with. They're the future of Edmond. So I'm running, not just for my kids, but for them as well. And as I look at it, we need to focus on a few things. One, excellence in education, supporting what we can. We're going to have a new mayor, a new city manager, a new superintendent. And together as a team, we need to have a one-team Edmond mentality. We also need to focus on our transportation. We're the family with the minivan. I'm going to be the mayor with the minivan. What that means is right after this, we're going to church. We got our activities. If the kids win, we'll probably go to Chick-fil-A. If my wife and I win, we'll probably go to Panera. But we're constantly in and out of that minivan. And we know this, that traffic needs to be addressed, and that'll be my top priority. I'm proud to be backed by the families who protect us, those that put on the badge of our police and fire, because we need to focus on public safety. And finally, our amenities. So, thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to this debate tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nash, next to you, 90 seconds, opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, everyone watching live stream. This is a unique opportunity. You're going to hear that word unique a lot tonight. I just want you to know that. A little bit about myself. I've lived in Edmond for 35 years. I raised my family here. We've got 2 wonderful daughters and 4 grandkids. Both our daughters graduated from Edmond Memorial. One of them is now a teacher, and she works at Edmond Memorial. My grandkids love coming to the parks here, and we want to make sure that that continues. You know, why I got into this race? Because we need to solve some issues. We have people who say we have a spending problem. We have people who say we have a revenue problem. The reality of it is we have a fiscal transparency problem. And we can't start solving our problems until we can actually say how much we're spending and how much we need. I am uniquely qualified with my experience. I served 12 years on the Edmond Economic Development Authority Board. I served for 6 years on the Edmond Public School Foundation Board. I'm an elder at my church, and I'm the chairman of the endowment committee. But more important than that, all of that, is the fact that I am a process improvement expert. That is what I do for a living, is consulting companies around the world. I worked for 10 years with the state of Oklahoma as a fiscal analyst, solving budget problems, as a director of finance for an agency, and as a management auditor. I look forward to tonight and want your vote at the end of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nash. Mr. Scott, round us out, 90 seconds for your opening statements.
I know many of you are looking up here at me and you're saying, why in the heck is that old beat up vet running for mayor? I know it. Well, I informed NonDoc and other media that I was a stand-in candidate. As a former teacher of the Bill of Rights, I felt it was my duty to use the public platforms like today to expose the inconvenient truth. And that inconvenient truth is for the last 4 years, our city government transformed into a regime, meaning elected officials felt they had the authority and the power to ignore their oaths of office and ignore we citizens' constitutional rights. You have to understand, in 1925, Edmond instituted their first government. It was a non-political government as per the Constitution. In 2021, Darrell Davis took office, and that all changed. We became a political government under the woke DEI and transformed our political government into a non-political, to a political, far-left, Democratic-run regime. I remind all of you, nobody voted for that change. Do you know that, first off, there are five portions of our First Amendment rights. We have the right of religion, the right of speech, the right of press, the right to freely assemble, but the most important one is Part 5, because we have the right to offer our regrets, our problems.
Petition our government, Mr. Scott, and you've got that woe sign right there, so that's 90 seconds.
Thank you.
I hate to cut you off, but I wasn't going to cut off the first minute. Big believer, had a pocket constitution right here myself. Okay, on that note, give them all a round of applause for those.
What happened? My time was up.
Our first round of questions tonight. The title of this is Leaders Arrive on Time. I appreciate all of you being here on time. We'll hint about some of the questions later. Everybody will have 1 minute to answer each question in this round. We'll rotate who answers first, starting alphabetically. Again with Mr. Hornbeek. First, sir, this two-part question. What is the single biggest issue facing the city of Edmond? And second, what is a hyper-local issue that you are personally passionate about?
Well, the single biggest issue facing Edmond right now is that we've got a crisis and that most of you are not even aware of. Most people are not even aware of it. That crisis is that we have a sales tax that's coming up for review in 2027, and that 1 cent sales tax represents 1/2 of our allocated general fund. It also represents about 30% of the money that goes towards employing staff and our first responders. If that sales tax is not renewed, we will be facing laying off staff and public first responders. This isn't a question about raising taxes. I don't like taxes any more than anybody else. It's a question of stabilizing our income. So one of the first things I'm going to do is bring that to attention and try to educate the public on how important that is.
Perfect. 5 seconds of a local issue that you are passionate about.
A local issue that I'm passionate about. Staying in the budget.
There we go. Okay, next question, same to you, Mr. Nash. 2 parts. What is the single biggest issue facing the city of Edmond? What is a hyper-local issue you're passionate about in the city?
Absolutely, that's a pretty easy one to answer. The biggest issue we've got is fiscal transparency. If anybody has tried to look at that budget book that we're using, I'm a fiscal analyst. That's part of my history. And guess what? It took me hours to figure out what was going on. We have a $453 million budget, but we're only estimating $349 million in revenue this year, which means we are actually filling the gap, balancing the budget with $104 million of reserves. Think about that. How long will our reserves last until we do have a true fiscal problem? As far as a single hyper issue, let's just jump right to traffic. Let's talk about what's going on in town. We all know traffic is terrible. Well, you know what? I moved here 35 years ago, and we were talking about making all of our arterial roads, the mile roads, 4 lanes through the entire city, from I-35 to Santa Fe and Memorial to Covell. We still haven't done it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nash. Mr. Robbins, same 2 questions to you. Biggest issue facing the city, hyperlocal issue you care about?
Over 3,000 doors that I've talked to residents and asked them similar question. The number one is definitely transportation and traffic. That is something that we'll tackle on day one. How we're going to do this is I will double the amount that the city is spending currently on pavement and potholes. We need to be able to, first, before approving development, make sure that we have a plan in place for the transportation. When schools are built, we need to make sure that the city is engaged, and when the city's going to do development, we need to make sure that the school is engaged. That's something I propose as one voice on city council. I'll carry that as leader. As a hyper issue, there's nobody in this room who thinks they're paying too much or too little for water. We uniquely are challenged with our water bill. I was the only one to stand up in all of city council as a brand new city councilman and say, I vote no against raising your water rates. Why? Because I know that a project that had been approved before I got there, which started with a price tag of about $340 million, has now ballooned to over $500 million. We cannot put all that on the ratepayer. As mayor, I'm going to hit pause. We're going to take a look at it. And so it's transportation number one, and I'm laser focused on your water bill number two.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. Same question to you. Biggest issue facing the city, hyper issue you're focused on.
We have the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. In other words, folks, it gives us the right to hold elected officials accountable. That is not happening in Edmond. The regime took those two rights away from us in the First Amendment. They did so by amending their Article 11, which is recall of elective officers. What they did was they made the requirements for a recall impossible for us to do. So therefore, we cannot hold any elected official accountable. That's what needs to be done.
That's your biggest issue, is the ability to recall people. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Haley, you have the second question for Mr. Nash.
Yes, we're going to start with Mr. Nash, just going around the line. Again, 60 seconds for each of you for this one. So in May, Mayor Darrell Davis is departing from the council after more than a decade of service. Thinking about his 4 years as mayor, first tell us, what will you embrace about his leadership style, and then what might you do differently? Mr. Nash, we'll start with you.
Put me on the spot first, eh? I'll tell you, Darrell Davis has done a lot of good things for the city of Edmond over the years. He's been on the Parks Department board, he served on city council, and he was mayor for 4 years. The last 4 years have been very difficult for everyone. It's a challenge. I appreciate everything that he's done in the past. I wish, as we look back on it, that maybe he had stood up, been more vocal, taken more of a stance on different issues. But I will be honest with you to say, I get it. It's been a hard 4 years. It is time we move on and that we get our city back on the right track again.
Okay, Ms. Robbins, coming to you next. What will you move forward with the mayor's leadership style? What might you change?
There's nobody that I believe worked harder than Darrell Davis. And I'd also like to note, as is referenced in our charter's founding in early 20s, 21, he wouldn't even been able to have been a candidate for mayor because of the inclusions in there. And we need to continue to work on that as we grow as a city. As mayor, my whole thing is that you're there to be able to lead, to be able to set the tone, to be able to tackle transportation, to be able to address fiscal transparency. Simple things that I brought to the table as a new city councilman. Number one, as I said, we need to return to in-person customer utility service. I brought that up every single month on council until we got it done. Number two, for example, on city council, we look at all the massage parlors that are out there. When that was brought to my attention, not only did I shut the one down that was operating in my district right across from the school, but I worked to put together a framework and a plan that I'll implement as mayor, that we're going to change the law in Oklahoma to allow us to be able to inspect those, to be able to have safety, to be able to take care of the women that are trafficked there. So I've been busy doing a lot. I want to thank him for what he's done, but there's a lot to get done, and I have the energy to do it.
Okay, Mr. Scott, you're up next.
I think Darrell Davis failed us all, because he took away our rights. Folks, if you didn't attend a council meeting, you didn't see it. I went to the council meeting, and I stood up at the citizen conference. Do you know that you were not allowed to use the clock? You know that you were not allowed to use, we weren't allowed to use the basic. They would not answer a single question when we went up to talk to them. Not one question. He failed us because he refused to listen to the people who elected him. That's what I think.
Is there anything with his leadership style that you would continue with?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Mr. Hornbeek, coming over back to you. What would you move forward with and what would you change?
Well, I think it's a good example of how Edmond has progressed, that we were able to elect a black mayor. And I think it's a wonderful closing statement that he will be the one to remove some of the bigoted laws that have remained on our charter that needed to be removed. And I think he's going through and removing everyone from every neighborhood that has anything like that. What would I do different? I heard him say one time that he was just a figurehead, and I don't believe that the mayor should be a figurehead. I think the mayor should be someone who provides vision and should look at the city manager and the rest of the staff to have them figure out a way to work with him in his plan to bring whatever we need to do to satisfy the requirements of the people of the city of Edmond.
Okay, thank you all for answering those questions. Trace is going to take a little break, and we're going to bring up UCO senior Shanice Hopkins. Shanice is a reporter with U Central News, and she is going to have the first toss-up question of the night.
That means each of you will have 30 seconds to answer, and anyone can go first.
Okay, in the next 18 months, the Regional Transit Authority is expected to ask voters in Edmond, Oklahoma City, and Norman to approve some level of sales tax for a commuter rail line connecting the communities. Now, all three cities must approve the tax for the project to be built. Now, toss-up question, go ahead.
Yes or no, do you want to see this commuter rail line approved by voters? Why or why not?
We don't get to say, I don't know. I mean, if you really think about it, I'm just going to go first. So,
Go first.
You know what? I don't know. I mean, we're talking about more taxes on us. We don't even know how much we need to run city government at this point. So how are we expected to vote on something that we know nothing about except that it's coming to the table?
So go ahead, continue.
We've got to come up with the answers to how much does it cost us to run the city of Edmond first, so we know what our tax base looks like.
So if you could answer this, if the tax was less than 1%, would you vote yes or no?
I don't know.
Okay.
So I'll answer that. I do know. I've been in all the meetings for RTA. I've met with Dave Holt. I've met with Governor Henry, who chairs that, with our representatives. I said that I wanted to get an up and down vote of the people to see if they wanted to fund our streets, our public safety, our recreation with a bond. They said no, and I said I would respect that.
That's not even true, Tom. You pushed the GO bond. You pushed it. You said, let's vote for it.
Oh, yeah,
Let's vote. You said you need to pass this.
Yeah, I absolutely did.
Okay, then say it correctly, that you were for it.
I don't need a principal here. I can talk for myself.
Well, go ahead. I
think you had that one in the barrel ready to fire, which, by the way, is not how I'm going to do government, neighbors. He was ready for that one. I absolutely got up. I campaigned and I said, I want to give voters an up or down vote on whether they want to have a bond on recreation, transportation, and public safety. I said that in my meeting with Mr. Nash when I was running for city council, and then he publicly endorsed me in his editorial.
I endorsed you until you betrayed the people of Edmond by quitting your ward and saying you wanted to run for mayor after you had promised people that you would represent the citizens of Ward 1 for the next 4 years.
The charter actually anticipates what happens when there's a vacancy in the mayor. I think Nash, you don't need to be known as Nasty Nash. I can speak for myself. I think neighbors want people to speak. The question was on the RTA. You said you didn't know. I do. I've been in the meetings with Dave Holt. I've been in the meetings with Governor Henry. Here's the deal. The citizens have said we do not want to have dedicated bond funding. That leaves only sales tax. In my last conversation with Mr. Holt and Governor Henry, they said that they want a 0.75% sales tax, which would bring us to 9% sales tax. I will tell you here tonight, we don't have that to give because we need to be able to give sales tax to potholes, to street repairs, to programs in Edmond. So as it stands here tonight, I cannot look in the eyes of the citizens of Edmond and ask them to support a 0.75 or 1% sales tax because that would be crushing to businesses. And so no, I'll be focused on the potholes and the streets before bringing billions of dollars in funding for a train.
Okay, Mr. Hornbeek or Mr. Scott, one of you take it away.
I can tell you this, I think this is one of the classic ploys by large cities to get government funds to come in and provide 90% of the money so that 10% of it's provided by the local people. But I would also say, I don't know that our current mass transit projects are very successful. How often have we seen our own buses drive by empty? I would like to see the study myself, but at this point, if I had to vote today, I would vote no.
Okay. You wanna go for it? Wrap it up here.
Train stations, when we're $1 billion, guys, with a B, $1 billion in debt in Edmond, Oklahoma, and we're thinking about trains? I don't think so.
Short and simple. Okay, Shanice has our next question as well.
Mr. Robbins, this will go to you first. Edmond's growth includes increased enrollment here at the University of Central Oklahoma, which has compounded the city's significant traffic congestion around campus. With voters rejecting last year's bond projects and with the new community complex coming online, what specific plans do you have to address traffic flow, road conditions, and pedestrian safety?
So great question. Number one, I have a plan for transportation. We need to double the amount that we're spending today on pavement and roads. When I was on council, I proposed, but was voted down, to go from $4.2 million to roughly $9 million in spending. Right now, Edmond is basically spitting in a bucket and trying to water their plants. It just doesn't work. It doesn't get there. Number two, what we need to be able to do and recognize is that anytime we build a piece of infrastructure, we need to make sure that there's a transportation plan to get things in and out, not the other way around like we've been doing it. That's why when I was on city council, I voted against a development, not because it didn't have potential merit, it's because there wasn't a transportation plan attached to it. I have over 10 years of experience working on transportation projects that are complex, and I'll bring that to the office of mayor. Thank you. Great question.
Mr. Scott, same question. What specific plans do you have to address traffic flow, road conditions, and pedestrian safety?
Again, we're $1 billion in debt. So the very first thing we have to do is sit down and show us the priority that we need to work on. Yes, roads. But let me tell you what, folks. Do you know that we have 8 or 19 elementary schools that have no SROs in them? Our children aren't protected. Why? That should be one of the number one priorities we have, that our children are protected. So yes, roads, but what are the priorities, and we need to establish that.
Okay. But do you have a clear answer specifically to how we are going to address what I addressed in the question?
Do you have a clear answer on specific plans for traffic, road conditions, and pedestrian
It
safety?
depends on when the council comes together, what are the priorities? Then we can talk about it. Okay?
Okay. Mr. Hornbeek?
Most people in here are not aware, but I asked the city of Edmond has never done a traffic study. This is simple. I think that we need to have a comprehensive traffic study conducted, and that we need to implement the recommendations. It's that simple. We owe this to the citizens. Traffic is not just an inconvenience, it's a safety problem, it's an economic problem, and it's a quality of life issue.
Thank you. Mr. Nash?
Yeah, I said it in my opening remarks. I've lived here for 35 years, and we still haven't finished our 4-lane roads, if you will, those mile roads through town. The reality of it is we need to quit spending money on this intelligent traffic system that's getting us nowhere, and use that money to help us finish widening those roads so that we can take traffic off of 2nd Street, off of 15th Street, off of Kelly and Santa Fe. Tom is right. We've got to get more money into the roads program. The challenge we have right now, though, is simple. If we're literally running a budget that requires us to use reserves, we've got to figure out how to plug that hole and then figure out where we get the money to handle the road situation.
Mark, I just want to say this. I think if we had the money to go and advertise to educate the people on the GO bond, we also could find the money to do a traffic study. Without doing a traffic study, that's like a patient going into a doctor and telling the doctor what his symptoms are, how he should be treated, and what the medications are that he wants to have. If without a plan, we can't create a critical path, we can't determine which ones need to be done first, and we can't determine how we can budget this out and get it done in some time.
Here's the problem with that, is we've had different studies in the past, and they said you need an intelligent traffic system. We've spent $10, $20 million on this system. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to say people don't drive on certain roads because they're not 4-lane. Let's start with the basics.
And I would argue that the basics are this. If you're going to provide a development in Edmond, there needs to be transportation first. It's very simple. I sat and talked to Marcus Jones, who's the chair of the school board yesterday. We happened to be at the same event. And I said, Marcus, as mayor, I'm going to ask the school board for something really simple. If we're going to build a new middle school and an elementary school like we're going to bring off of Covell, we need to make sure that we're in lockstep with the city so that we can turn that from 2-lane to a 4-lane if there's a traffic study. And vice versa. If we're going to do a development in Edmond, say we're going to have more than 50 houses or entertain some type of development that's going to impact schools, do you realize right now there's no communication check the box that the city has checked in with our Edmond Public Schools to determine what the impact is going to be on their infrastructure and their hiring? We're going to have a new city manager, a new mayor, and a superintendent. It's time for a new Edmond, and I have that transportation background to be able to get it done.
Okay, we're gonna cut you guys off for this one. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Shanice.
Great job. Give her a round of applause.
Give her a round of applause.
Thank you, wonderful job. Great job, Haley. I appreciate your help on that. Who would have known asking about traffic would have turned this into a contentious conversation in the city of Edmond, but we like the conversation. I'm welcoming Blake Douglas onto the debate stage right now. He leads our Edmond Civic Reporting Project at NonDoc. If you live in Edmond, you haven't met him, please do after the debate tonight. He's got a few questions here, and then he will be working on our recap. But his job is to cover this city, and we have tried to do that over the last couple of years. You have a toss-up question for us, Blake.
I do. Recently, the U.S. Department of Justice released a report about, quote, deficiencies in Oklahoma County's behavioral health service system. A quick toss-up for anybody, 30 seconds. Did you read that report, and if so, what were your thoughts?
Are we talking about the gentleman that recently was shot by the police who had a health issue?
That'll be talked about momentarily. We're talking about the report that the Department of Justice released about mental health and law enforcement intersection in central Oklahoma. Anybody read it? Okay, great. Well, we'll send them all the article about that. Blake, I think you have a substitute question instead.
I do. Well, in general, on the intersection of mental health and law enforcement in Edmond, what are your thoughts on that and how it's currently handled? Is there anything that the city could do better?
There was a gentleman who was shot who was obviously had some mental issues. The police had no business being involved in that. They're not trained for it, they can't handle it. That should be an assigned health official should have had that person, that individual, that man, on a list and have checked with him and called him and checked with the neighbors and let them know that this gentleman has problems. That was where the police had no business being involved in that. It's not trained for it.
That's great. I think, Blake, since he talked about that, why don't we just go right to that next question and ask about this situation?
Certainly, yeah. That's the next question. And this happened in September when the man was experiencing psychosis and he had lit his house on fire, and when Edmond police responded to this call, he was shot in his driveway. For weeks, the neighbors of the gentleman had contacted EPD requesting welfare checks and concern for his deteriorating mental health. A couple were so concerned that they even contacted an elected official. With so much warning about the crisis, what should we make of the case study? What should be done to improve public safety response to mental health calls in Edmond?
I'll take that question. I think we need to take a proactive approach in helping our first responders. And I plan to approach the cities in this county and to try to address these issues in two manners. Number one, create a plan to provide a facility to appropriately train our officers and better train them to deal with the responses of those who are mentally ill and afflicted. Secondly, though, and even more importantly, we need to provide ongoing support to our first providers, because the trauma that they're exposed to on almost a daily basis is 100 times more than all of the experiences we will ever experience as a normal citizen. And we need to help them deal with that, and it's an issue that is inherent in the jobs they provide.
In this regard, I would say I'm not running on my rhetoric or words, I'm running on my record. I prioritized mental health. I made sure that was fully funded. I was in those difficult conversations. Now, if you go back to when my grandfather experienced mental health episodes, which were significant for my mom, and he would get violent and have to be removed from the home, the only call they had was to the police, and the only thing that those little kids like my mom saw growing up was him being punched, knocked out, and being brought out in a straitjacket, or being cooled off and walked around the street so he could return, and my mom and her siblings would have to go flee. We live in a different era. Let me tell you what happened just 2 weeks ago. It was cold, it was icy, it was snowing. My brother, I have an identical twin brother. If somebody ever meets you, you don't know who they are, that's him. He said, Tom, I need some help. I said, what's going on? He said, there's a man who is cold. He's shuffling around and muttering to himself. He's in my car and it stinks. He's obviously hasn't bathed in a while. He needs help. What can we do? For generation after generation, that call would have been to 911. That would have been the police. There could have been a scuffle. There could have been a police record. Lives would be in danger. What he was able to do for the very first time was to go to North Care here, right here in Edmond. And with funds that we've set aside with the county, working with the Department of Health and the state, with training that we have, and no, we haven't gotten it all right, and there's still things that we need to learn, that man was welcomed with open arms. And my brother literally said when he got there, the gentleman who was in intake said, don't worry about this, sir, we got it. Last night, my friend Joe Tribbett called me, similar concern. A young lady who was obviously disheveled, had some problems, didn't know where to go, it was cold. The gas station where she was at was about ready to kick her out. Brought her to North Care, they were able to triage and then get her to where she needed to be warm. It's not perfect, but it's working, and I'm proud of my Edmond.
Mr. Nash, I believe your turn to answer that question.
All right, and we kind of rolled that over into the Ross Norwood situation, and look, it was tragic. And there's been a lot of conversation about how the police responded, what was going on in the neighborhood, the man's family. I come from a law enforcement family. I'm just going to tell you right now, I will never put myself into a law enforcement officer's shoes and try to pass judgment on them. They are trained to serve and protect, and that makes it very difficult in a lot of cases. We know that we have a mental health problem in this state, and we know that we have a mental health problem in this city. And we're doing what we can, but obviously there is a communication disconnect between all of our services and how we respond. Otherwise, this situation would not have occurred. We could have gotten him help sooner instead of having how many phone calls to the police over the past several years. So we've got to do more. We're doing a lot, but it can't stop now. We have got to find the rest of that solution.
So raise a hand. Should the Police Accountability Board, or whatever that's called, Blake, you covered it the other day, I mean, should that be a discussion on how do we get officers more resources, even if it's mental health professionals? Yes or no?
Absolutely, yes.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That looks like a consensus. Mr. Hornbeek, I think you may have had 15 more seconds. Is there something you wanted to say?
Well, I could get into the facts, but
You looked at me, and I just didn't know whether you were wanting to say something else. If not, we can.
let's go on.
Okay. Mr. Scott, I'm gonna bring my microphone down to you. We need to double check and make sure your mic's still on, so I'm gonna let you handle this and answer that question.
Well, the thing is, if the gentleman had a history, he should have been assigned a mental health provider. And that person then would check on him. That's the thing. I don't believe that we should impose being mental health providers for the police officers. Police officers got enough to do to try to do with that. If we can have ride-alongs with health providers, that's fine. But police officers are not, that's not their job, guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Give them all a round of applause. Bennett is going to check that battery. This is how you have to think on your feet as a journalist and gentlemen. As if you're in elected office, I guarantee you have to think on your feet as well. So thank you so much for answering those questions. Blake, you've got another question for us as we start round 2 of this debate. Round 2 is called Housing and Urban Development, and that's literally what we're going to talk about. So it's not only the actual name of HUD, but it's what we're going to talk about. And we've got another toss-up question. This is also a great time to remind your friends to share that live stream of the debate. I want to make sure that I'm not too loud. I have that tendency, and we're making sure that we've got that microphone working for Mr. Scott. Blake, you have that toss-up question. Go ahead.
I do. So once again, first come, first serve, 30 seconds. Edmond is one of the few Oklahoma cities with a charter that says residents have to own property to be eligible to hold office. Some say the requirement makes sure city council members have a vested interest in Edmond, but others say it's discriminatory and it limits the leadership pool. Yes or no, do you think this requirement in the city charter should be eliminated?
Well, I kind of addressed that earlier. It is being eliminated. I think the steps are already underway, and yes, I think it should be eliminated.
I don't believe that the steps are underway to deal with that charter issue. They're dealing with the discriminatory language in plats.
Okay.
So when you look at what's in the charter, we need to fix that. We've got people who've been renting in this city for 20 years. I think they know as much about what's going on in Edmond as homeowners do, as other property owners do, business owners who own a piece of property and are eligible to be on the council. We need to fix it. It's just difficult when we're talking about a charter issue. We've got to have the will to open up the charter and fix it.
I'm holding the Constitution here, and it says right here in the 15th Amendment, folks, I'm going to read it for you. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous conditions of servitude. It's taken care of right here in the 15th Amendment, brother.
I think when you asked me that question, my answer was this: yes.
Well, we have agreement. Thank you all. Let's give Blake a round of applause for his questions. He does compelling community journalism. He has to shift back into recap mode to get this story out on the morning paper, which is nondoc.com. It's digital. Check it out. Haley, welcome back to the stage. Good to see you.
Glad to be back.
You have, I think, an intro for our next topic on page 7.
Yes. Sorry, I'm there now. Okay, so it's time to talk about perhaps the most controversial issue in Edmond over the past decade, which is housing. So Edmond is a fairly affluent community with a leading public school district. People want to live here, but many people that work critical jobs in this community just simply cannot afford to live here. So go ahead, Trace. I'm jumping on you now.
No, you're fine. Edmond's rising housing costs, supply limitations, and a fairly fervent anti-apartment sentiment has led voters to challenge and reject multifamily development proposals for years. So as we look at the city, do you consider Edmond's housing trajectory sustainable, or do Edmond residents need to find a way to improve multifamily housing? Mr. Nash, this is going to you first, and I can repeat it again if you weren't.
No, I've got it.
Thank you.
We've talked a little bit about it, that we've got to get infrastructure ahead of residential development. That has to occur. If we were to take the East Edmond 2050 plan, that was a recent study that was done that we've seen very little action taken coming out of it. But if we would take that and we would build out East Edmond according to that plan, every new house that's built would actually cost the city over $700 a year more on top of what they're paying for electricity and water, simply because of the maintenance and the police protection, the fire protection. So when we look at it, we've got to find where that balance is. We've got to find a plan that says we can support our growth. And it's going to be difficult. And the reality of it is, housing prices are not going to go down in Edmond until supply is higher than demand. Apartment rentals are not going to go down for the same reason.
Okay,
So
go
that
ahead.
is a yes or no on needing multifamily housing.
That is a, we have got to figure out how we're going to create growth. I can't say yes or no because we've got such contention going on right now that if we don't figure out how to do it right, like we did at Sorghum Mill and Broadway, that is a plan that would work for apartments, where you actually build new houses, single family, next to a residential neighborhood. On the other side of it, you've got duplexes, quadplexes. Then you build apartments on the other side of it by the railroad tracks. That makes sense.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robbins, same question to you, sir.
Last 18 months, it's been a real honor to represent Ward 1. Ward 1 in Edmond has every type of housing. It has fabricated homes, mobile homes, townhomes, student homes. For students, it has senior assisted living. It has multi-million-dollar micro homes. It actually has 2 homes in there that were literally ordered out of the Craftsman, if you can believe it, like Sears catalog that came here. I don't know, on the Wells Fargo wagon isn't coming. And all of that exists in Ward 1. So we absolutely need different types of attainable housing for people at all different types of their lives. What I believe it needs to happen, though, is that citizens feel like that the government's a little bit out of step, that things are happening to them instead of for and with them. I think one of the ways that we can change it, and I've said it again, and I'll be clear, and I'll say it one more time, is that we need to have a transportation plan before we allow for development, because when we don't take care of our transportation, that's where the literal friction, not just me as the minivan mayor experiences it, all of our families as we try to get across town. So we need to be able to have a plan for transportation before we build that'll alleviate some of the problems, that'll allow for some of the development that I think all of us are in favor of.
And Mr. Scott, same question to you. I think Haley has the microphone for you. And do you think that Edmond needs to find a way to be able to approve multifamily housing?
I don't think we should approve anything until we take care of our business we've got right now, number one. I agree, though. We've got to address it. But first we have to address, we've got to get the priorities. What is our priorities? We've got to get our roads fixed. We've got to get our schools taken care of. And then we can start worrying about building more housing additions. The problem right now, like I said, we aren't even protecting our kids in school. No SROs in our elementary schools. We've got to fix that. We talk about, oh, we've come to Edmond because our schools are great. Not if they're not safe.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hornbeek, to close it out, 60 seconds to you, same question. Does Edmond need to find a way to approve multifamily housing?
The answer is yes, but here's a reason why. Growth is inevitable, and we're going to have to decide how do we want this city to grow. I've worked for home builders for 50 years, and I can tell you they've got a formula. If you want us to provide single-family homes that are affordable, it's virtually impossible in the city of Edmond. We can't build a developable lot in the city of Edmond for less than $100,000. If a lot is $100,000, then the formula that these builders use is that they're going to multiply that times 4, and they're going to have to build a structure at least that much to pay for the land, because land is plentiful in Oklahoma. You put a house on a $100,000 lot, you've built a $500,000 house. That's not affordable. So we're going to have to figure out a way to educate the public that townhomes are not bad. If you don't want apartments, let's at least look at doing townhomes.
Thank you very much, sir. Haley, do you want to take this next question? We sort of flip-flopped that there.
You know what? That's okay. We'll go with it. So a new 10-story apartment complex proposed along I-35 and Memorial would add 204 units to the housing market. A prior apartment proposal was defeated in 2022, and the last apartments built here in Edmond as a whole came out in 2012. This time around, some people think the I-35 adjacent property should be prioritized for commercial development because it could generate additional sales tax revenue from people pulling off the highway to buy things. Mr. Robbins, we're going to start with you. The question here is that idea a legitimate reason to oppose this apartment proposal? And then part 2, how do you envision I-35 development in Edmond unfolding?
I'll say it again for the 3rd time. You need to have a transportation traffic plan to be able to get people in and out, which I don't think it has. Number 2, I asked when it came up, I called my city councilor because I noticed that it had been recommended for approval by staff, and I asked a simple question. I said, hey, did staff engage and figure out if there's been a community meeting or any type of dialogue with the neighbors, the citizens around there? The answer was no. And quite frankly, as the mayor of Edmond, there will not be a development of such that would ever happen without first starting with a dialogue with the community. And finally, I think one of the reasons why people are reticent to have any type of kind of apartment or housing is because we need to hold landowners accountable. On Ayers, there was a landowner who was stacking and packing veterans in deplorable conditions, and that had been an issue for over 10 years. Where people, there was drug use, there was crime, there was fines, there was feces, there was rodents, and I finally took that landowner to task and got him declared a public nuisance, and he sold the property. So we need to clean up what we have, we need to project for the future, but we need transportation and community engagement first.
Okay, Mr. Scott, to you, is this a legitimate reason to oppose the apartment proposal, and how do you envision the I-35 development in Edmond unfolding?
I will say that the I-35 project, I'm just going to put that aside, because everything we do, guys, everything, these TIF programs and we build, what does that do to the elders? What does that do to their property taxes? Because they go up. And elders are on fixed income. They can't afford for those things to go up. So we need to be very, very, very careful about how we build, because if your property taxes, you're forcing the elders out of this city.
Mr. Hornbeek, 60 seconds to you, same question. Is concern about or a preference to have a sales tax generating development along I-35, is that more important than a housing project, or how do you see development unfolding along the interstate there?
The answer to your first question is yes. I think that planned development along I-35 is much more important than housing. Classic planning would have the commercial and the retail along the interstate and along the Colville Parkway, if we could ever finish it. And then beyond that would be mixed-use housing, whether that be apartments or townhomes. Beyond that, you would put parks and green belts to buffer the residential neighborhoods from first the mixed-use housing, and the mixed-use housing then becomes a buffer between the commercial and the retail. And that's why I say we have to look hard at the I-35 development plan, and we also need to try to create new plans for the I-35 and for the Colville Parkway.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nash, last to you, 60 seconds, same question.
All right, I'm going to go back to Haley's original first part of the question, which was the 10-story development. And the answer is, that is too big of a project in too small of a space. They want a 10-story apartment building, 4-level parking garage on 1.4 acres. Let's get serious. Now, to the second part of the question, how do we develop I-35? Should it be commercial, retail? There is no reason why we couldn't do the village concept with retail on the ground floor and have apartments above them, but we've got to generate some type of revenue system that's going to invite people who drive through our city to stop and spend their money with us. Right now, our tax dollars are leaking to Oklahoma City. Let's figure out a way to keep it in Edmond and get other people's tax dollars in here as well.
Thank you very much. I've got the next question, starting with Mr. Scott, 60 seconds. Edmond voters recently rejected a $231 million package of public projects that would have been funded through a 14% property tax increase. Those tax dollars would have paid back GO, or general obligation bonds, which would have financed road projects, a new fire station, and park improvements. We discussed those briefly earlier, but I'm going to ask you, Mr. Scott, to start it out. Edmond is one of the only major cities in Oklahoma that doesn't use GO bonds to fund these types of projects. That was a high price tag, 14%, $231 million. Do you believe the city council should try again and propose a much smaller package to try to get some sort of funding for those projects, or do you think the entire idea should be scrapped?
The whole idea should be scrapped. The reason why is because, again, when you do that, you've got elders that live around that area. Our property taxes go up. 14%? No way. And then, by the way, our water has gone up 3%, our electricity has gone up. You're forcing the elders out. We've got to do this correctly.
Mr. Hornbeek, same question to you. Should we try again at some point for GO bonds, a smaller package, or is that ship sailed with the voters rejecting?
At this time, I think that ship sailed, but I'm not opposed to GO bonds. I just wasn't for that GO bond. I thought it was put together quickly. It didn't have enough citizen input into it. Every one of the people that were selected to be on that committee were either selected by a councilman or a mayor. I'm not saying that any of those people had anything wrong, but it appeared to be a controlled situation. And then they wanted to speed up the process, and they had 4 or 5 meetings in about 6 weeks. The last time we did a CIP project, we had 100 volunteers come in, and they worked on that for over a year. We need to slow down the process, make it transparent, educate the people, and then possibly do a smaller GO bond.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Nash, same question to you.
I could just say ditto to what David just said, but let me add on to that a little bit. You know, if it had been something smaller in the first place, and I said this in several of the forums when we discussed the bonds before the vote, that if it was smaller, I probably would have been for it. But this was too big, too fast, and the reality of it was, we're going to go out and build $231 million worth of infrastructure, and we're still not going to have the identified revenue to maintain it long term.
Thank you. Mr. Robbins, 60 seconds to you. What do you think is the next step on this topic?
I worked and said that I would put it to a vote of the people, up or down. I advocated for that. I articulated the benefits of other cities being able to adopt that program and what that would mean for Edmond, and I went all over doing that. I also said clear as a bell that I would respect the will of the people, and as they voted, it is not time to revisit that. What it's time to do is focus on excellence in education, transportation, recreation, and public safety. Doing so with the dollars in the budget that I've gone through with a fine-tooth comb to be able to enact the changes we need to be able to double the amount that we're spending on paving, to be able to have a plan with our school district as they grow that we understand what's happening, and as we grow, they understand what's happening. I'm proud to be the only candidate endorsed by our families that protect our families in the community, our police and fire. Why? Because we need to look for smart ways to use dollars in our budget to attract and retain those employees like I did when for the first time they became the first in the state, and I'm very proud of this, to be able to get paid maternity and paternity leave. They also receive paid time off for adoption and for foster care, because it's a real need in our community. We're able to do that for pennies on the dollar. So there's a lot to say, but no, I won't be revisiting that as mayor.
Thank you very much. Haley, you have the next question, starting with Mr. Hornbeek.
Yes, so the metro area's annual point-in-time survey occurs early tomorrow morning. Volunteers will attempt to document how many unhoused people are living here in Edmond and in other cities. In addition to that, a bill has been proposed up at the state capitol, which, quote, prohibits any municipality in the state with a population less than 300,000 from providing programs or services to homeless people. Currently, Edmond does not have a full shelter serving the homeless in city limits. So the question here, would you support putting any level of city funding towards a homeless shelter or services aimed at addressing the unhoused population?
Again, I think this is a perfect thing in which we could approach all of the municipalities in the county and try to create one location and everybody support it. Do we need one? Yes. And one of the problems is going to be is, where's it going to be located? Well, if we could make it a county project, we could get it outside of the city limits of every city, place it somewhere in the county, and have less resistance to it.
Okay, Mr. Nash?
We need something. I can tell you for a fact that we have well over 50 people every single morning visit Breakfast on Boulevard. People who are homeless, people who are struggling to get by, and they come get a free breakfast, a sack lunch. We've got to do something, because you look at what's going on nights like we've had this week, and where do they go at night? And that's a question that I think a lot of us ask. One of the issues that I know that we're going to hear from the opponents to that is, well, then you're just inviting the homeless into Edmond. We already have them, folks. We already have them. And we've got to figure out how we deal with it long term, and part of that, whether we like it or not, is going to be some kind of a shelter.
Okay, Mr. Robbins, any city funding, or would you support a shelter in Edmond?
So I'll let my record speak for itself, and that is this. I've been laser focused on providing services for people in the unhoused community, or who might be having, for example, shortages and meeting some of their utilities or meeting some of their food scarcity. So for example, on that, we have You Are Special. It's a great organization here in Edmond that provides brand new clothing to boys and girls in school, so they can stand out a little less, they can blend in a little more, and have clothing. I've worked with them to be able to provide those for people that are unhoused. When we expanded Edmond Mobile Meals, before I got there, they were told that they needed to find a new place to go. Well, they didn't have a place to go. There was a lot of frustration there. I came in on the tail end of it, and I said, let's be a problem solver. So I worked with the Edmond Public School District and got You Are Special a new place to be able to be over at a new facility that the Edmond Public School has, and then I was able to identify $15,000 in funding to be able to provide that transition. So I think when it comes to our unhoused, we have great nonprofits, we have great organizations. My record is clear. I've supported those organizations and will continue to do so to find meaningful solutions.
Real quick,
for those
Mr.
residents.
Robbins, though, yes or no, does Edmond need to have a homeless shelter?
I don't think I don't think Edmond has the numbers right there that would need its own homeless shelter now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scott, same question to you, 60 seconds.
Again, we are $1 billion in debt. No, we do not need a shelter here in Edmond. But county is the answer. I agree totally with you, David. That's the way to go.
Well, at the risk of asking about the county jail, that is the end of round 2, so thank you so much. Speaking of sales tax votes and things like that, watch for the $400 million funding gap on the jail. We're going to go to round 3. It's titled Conflicts and Interests. We've got just a couple more minutes in this debate, guys, so stick with us. Our final round, like I said, titled Conflicts and Interests. We will ask each of you a question tailored to your campaign, and only you will have 90 seconds to answer that question. But first, our final hand-raised question of the night, yes or no. Edmond's charter has got a couple odd things in it. It says that no matter what, even if one of you gets 70% of the vote on February 11th, the top 2 have to go to a general election on April 1st. So with that in mind, will you commit to participating in a second, potentially in studio, potentially back here in Edmond, a debate? So yes or no, would you do a debate if you make the next round? Mr. Scott says no. Mr. Robbins and Nash and Hornbeek are all yeses. That's great. Haley, I guess I have this first question. Mr. Robbins, this question is for you. Again, 90 seconds for you. You have thrived in the intersection between private business and government. You've done political work for petroleum companies. You've helped create groups like the Oklahoma Bitcoin Association, and your own company, Solid Foundation Consulting, means you might work with any number of clients at any time, any of which you're free to discuss here tonight. As mayor of Edmond, I want to ask, what transparency requirements do you think would be appropriate for your financial interests and consulting contracts? Put another way, how do you walk that ethical line as someone involved in consulting, and whose responsibility should it be to watch you walk it?
Well, that's a great question, Trace. In fact, if you go back to when I announced running for mayor, when Darrell Davis decided he wasn't going to run and I had to announce. And by the way, I want to correct the record. Mark said I quit. The charter says that you have to step down in order to run for mayor. It's an honor for me to run for mayor, and I'm not quitting. I'm just getting to work on behalf of the city. And as I do so, I put out in my press release a couple things. Number 1 is I wouldn't go negative. Number 2 is that I believe that before a vote is cast, that every resident of Edmond should know any piece of property or economic interest that's Edmond related. Spoiler alert, I've done that, and I have a really unique relationship with this organization called my bank. And my bank allows me, if I pay this unique monthly payment over the next about 13 years, that my wife and my 3 kids and our dog Daisy get to stay in that home. And so I have publicly said that if you want to run, before a vote is cast, I believe that you should disclose any primary or secondary piece of property, business interest, anything that could be in conflict. Additionally, we should all meet with the city attorney as we do to be as clear as that we can. My understanding is that Mr. Nash has also taken both those pledges to be positive and then also to disclose his property, which I believe, I'll let him speak for his house himself, is just his house. I don't know if Mr. Hornbeek has done, but when it comes to conflict of interest, I think I would have the full faith and confidence of the citizens of Edmond when I'm up there voting that they know any and all property or business interest I have before I vote.
Thank you. Haley, you have that next question.
Yes, Mr. Hornbeek.
Trace, before you go there, can I respond to something that he commented about me in my statement? I want to clarify.
I'll give you 15 seconds,
Okay,
sir.
I want to clarify it in multiple forums. In an interview with the Edmond Way newspaper and on a podcast, he stated his only political ambition was representing the citizens of Ward 1 for 4 years, and he resigned less than 2 years later.
Mr. Robbins, 15 seconds, back to you.
The charter anticipates what happened when a mayor steps down, and so I believe that it's just going on behalf of the work. If I've gone and done another job, tonight I will not declare my candidacy for the President of the United States. Look, I give 20 hours a week to this job. I think as a city councilor you get paid $700 a month. It's pennies on the dollar. I do it because I love the citizens of Edmond. And the mayor is a way that I can magnify that love. I can be there day one ready because I understand the budget, the process, the people, and the plan, and I can hit a home run, yet a grand slam for the people of Edmond. It makes me a better person to be able to lead. It's not weakness. I'm ready to serve now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Haley?
Okay, Mr. Hornbeek, we have a similar question for you. Your career has included the creation of leading architecture firms, working on development projects, and a tenure on the board for Citizens Bank of Edmond, which has financial and real estate interest in this community. So we have the same question as mayor. What transparency requirements would be appropriate for your financial interest in bank board position? And then how can you walk that ethical line, and who watches you do it? 90 seconds.
Well, I sold my stock in my large firm 3 years ago, and in terms of transparency, I am happy to disclose a financial statement and every piece of property that I own. I own my home free and clear. I have a rent house that I'm still making a mortgage property on. I have a piece of vacant property, and I own an office building in downtown Edmond. I own that office building with 2 other partners. My income is probably less than most of the people up here at this point in time. And I'm happy to be totally transparent about my financial situation and any property that I own.
Okay, Mr. Nash, you don't have nearly the number of companies registered under your name as the other opponents.
Hold it, wait a second though. Do I have any time left?
Yes.
Sure.
If I have any time left, if I'm going to be asked to disclose my real estate holdings and property, I think it's only fair to ask a consultant, have you ever been a lobbyist? And if so, who have you been a lobbyist for?
Oh, for the governor. So I was the Deputy Secretary of Energy, which is the largest, obviously, economic driver of this state. After the rocket ship Chesapeake found gravity, my wife and I had a choice. I was asked by some if I'd go to Washington, D.C., because my background's in government affairs. Instead, we decided we wanted to stay in Edmond. And I had the honor and privilege of serving as your Deputy Secretary of Energy in the previous governor's cabinet. And as doing so, you're required by state ethics law to register as a lobbyist. So appreciate the gotcha, but I was serving the people.
Haley, you have that next question for Mr. Nash.
Okay, you do not have, we're gonna just pick it up where I left off. You do carry 3 scarlet letters for some people in this community. ENA, the Edmond Neighborhood Alliance, an organization you helped found in 1994 that's effectively advocated in favor of property value interests and against certain developments. You recently clarified that you went from being a board member to an advisor after ENA engaged on an issue outside of the mission and purpose. So the question here, first, what was the issue, and then how do you respond to people who worry you might show bias in favor of ENA or against multifamily housing projects?
Sure. The issue was the digital messaging boards. If everyone watching tonight or here in the audience remembers when we had a big issue, we had a referendum vote on the issue of the law with digital messaging. I felt like that was not a neighborhood issue, that we should have stayed out of it as the Edmond Neighborhood Alliance, and the board felt otherwise. When one of the board members produced a video that was misleading and improperly used a soundtrack from a popular singer, I asked if they had a license for it. He said no. I said take it down. He didn't. At that point, I said, guys, if we're not going to play by the rules, I can't be on this board, and I resigned. A couple of years later, I was asked to come back as an advisor to simply tell the ENA when I felt like they step out of their lane. I've been doing that now for, I don't know, about 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years. And that's the bottom line. I show up when they have a question for me, and that's it.
And I don't want to, and I realize, I just want to say one thing here, is that you start off by saying the scarlet letter that was in place on ENA. I don't believe that's a scarlet letter at all.
That was tongue-in-cheek. I'll take
I
credit
know,
for that.
but I get what it implies is that everyone up here has served in their own way. Mr. Hornbeek is an architect. Mark has definitely been involved in the community on multiple issues. Old Ranger, you know where to find him every single day. I think when people serve, I think it should be elevated. Now, we all do it in a different way, we all get excited about our own things, but I would never look at like Mark's passion for ENA, even though we might have disagreed. I look at that as hopefully something that we can all do, and hopefully people that are watching at home, whether it's through ENA or through other organizations, the Rotary, the Lions Club, this debate, a run for city council, run for mayor, but I look at it as a positive of all these things. That
Haley, I took it as tongue-in-cheek, and so in that same light, I guess I better throw in there, and I have never been a member of the Edmond Alliance, which gets confused with the ENA at times.
Okay, I will take it. Mr. Scott, we have our last question to you.
Haley, I will ask that if you want to
Yes,
give him
yes.
that microphone, that works great. Mr. Scott, in recent years, you've been involved in some public confrontations, including your arrest at a State Board of Education meeting. Your political involvement has included disruption at the city council chambers, and some folks in town think you come off a little bit rude, tilting at windmills. You know, I'm curious what your response is to the people who think you would be better served to chill a little bit and focus on more being a positive
Hell
voice.
no.
Okay, there we go.
And the reason is, our government was Biden 2.0. They took away our rights, brother. That's why I fought. We could not even talk to them. They will not listen to us. They violated their own oath of office. So the answer, heck no. I had a duty, sir, to stand up for our people, the people of Oklahoma, and this city. My duty, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. That's the end of round 3. Appreciate everybody's answers. And we're going to move into closing statements. Mr. Hornbeek, you have a 90-second closing statement first for us.
I was a Boy Scout, and I learned that if you want to start a fire, you have to have 3 ingredients. You need to have fuel, you need to have oxygen, and you need to have heat. And if you take any one of those away, you will not start a fire. If you want to have good government, you still need 3 ingredients. You need transparency, oversight, and accountability. And without all 3 of those ingredients, you will not have good government. I also learned from my scout leaders and my coaches that people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And then I was taught in architecture school that failure to plan is a plan for failure. I've spent my entire life just doing that, planning and solving problems. What qualities will I bring to the city of Edmond? I bring honesty and integrity, a lifetime of devotion to this city, an institutional knowledge of how this city works and how it operates. And I intend to bring back responsible government with transparency, oversight, and accountability. I'm David Hornbeek. I'm running for mayor. And if you want to get involved, please go to hornbeekformayor.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause if you're supporting Mr. Hornbeek. And Mr. Robbins, 90 seconds to close to you, sir.
Well, looking at my kids throughout this debate, I think I accomplished my #1 goal. I just hope that they look at the time that our family's been serving on city council as a time that we've been able to think about others. We have a motto in our family, and that's kindness begins with me. And I hope that in the future, whether or not I'm able to serve as your mayor, that's the legacy that we'll be able to leave. I'm very active in responding to constituents. If you want to get a hold of me, we can have coffee in 5 minutes or tomorrow. I want to give you an example of one of those. Ms. Neely Gay was somebody who commented when I posted a picture of a splash pad that was opening, and she just said something to the effect of, I hope my son has a place to go to the bathroom. Not understanding what she was talking about, I messaged her, reached out to her, asked to meet with her over coffee, as I've done dozens of times with citizens across Edmond. She explained to me, as her son has mental and physical delays, that as he grows older, he's still unable to change himself. So as a family, as they've outgrown their changing table, they no longer have a place that they can safely, sanitarily change him. I didn't know about that issue, but I had her come in and talk to our parks director and our staff and educate those around us. What I found out was she had an app with families just like hers, where she would press and it would tell her where bathrooms were that she could change someone like her son in a place that was dignified. There was only 3 or 4 locations in Edmond. So working with her, and city council and staff, every new rehab building, every new build will include a place someone like her son can go where they can change him. Those are the small things we do in our city. Those are how we take care of our neighbors. My name is Tom Robbins. I'll be honored to ask for your vote and to serve as your mayor.
Thank you very much. Give Mr. Robbins a round of applause. Mr. Nash, 90 seconds to you, sir.
My name's Mark Nash. You've been hearing it all evening, and I want to just drive home the reason why I'm running for mayor. I have spent the last 35 years building Edmond to where it is today. We haven't gotten where we want to be, where we need to be. I bring a unique set of skills and qualifications as a certified process improvement expert. I bring fiscal management experience with me from state government. I am plugged in. I have served, as I said, on the Edmond Public Schools Foundation Board, on the EEDA Board. I am currently serving on the Edmond Fine Arts Institute Fundraising Committee for their new building. We've got some issues that we need to solve in this city. It starts with fiscal transparency. It's that simple. We have $990 million worth of bond debt and $81 million in bank loans out there. We are balancing our budget with reserve funds. We have got to solve that problem so that we can focus on the roads. If we can do all of that, we will make Edmond that great place to grow again.
Thank you,
My name is Mark Nash. I appreciate your time this evening. I look forward to your vote on February 11th. If you want to get involved, it's nashforedmond.org. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Give him a round of applause. And Mr. Scott, my brother, I've got 90 seconds for you to close. I'm going to keep it a hard 90 because I got to pay these fine security guards so they can get back to walking the beat. So, yes, sir.
Well, the woke DEI government that we had is gone, but they've left us in $1 billion in debt. Folks, because of this huge debt, we are going to face some very hard times coming. We have great officials here that plan to run for mayor, and they're all great men with great ideas. I would like to point out, first off, let me go back to myself just a minute. I've lived in Edmond off and on for 50 years as a dad, a soldier, student, coach, teacher, and always a patriot. I am a graduate of Central State University, by the way. I know in my heart, we the people of Edmond are Oklahoma strong. We have faced adversity. Before, as Oklahomans, we come back stronger and even more resilient. It's who we are, folks. We stand up and we fight for the greater good, knowing our God and Savior will always guide us and protect us through the hardest of times. Tonight, there are 3 remaining candidates. I would like to point out David Hornbeek. David Hornbeek is another longtime citizen of over 50 years. He's a devout Christian. He is the famed Oklahoma architect, and David knows no structure is firm until it has a hard, firm foundation. And David knows that, based on that, David, you, my brother, will make this country, make this city great because you know how to make a firm foundation. And that foundation is the Constitution of the United States of America and the Oklahoma Constitution. Good luck, my brother.
Thank you very much. Yay, Constitution. Okay, that wraps up tonight's debate. Thank you to the candidates, to University of Central Oklahoma, our debate sponsors, AARP Oklahoma, ULI Oklahoma, and the Scholar Strategy Network. Remember, early voting starts on Thursday, February 6th. Election day is February 11th. Good night. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you for the kind words. You want this?
Good job, guys.